Hi everybody, this is Andrea for the Learning Bear Podcast, your resource for wild professional development. Today we're going to be doing a review of an environmental education curriculum called Flap to the Future. Flap to the Future was developed by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and if you don't know who Cornell Lab of Ornithology is, you're missing out because they're amazing. If you need help with bird calls or identification, they're the place to go. As far as I'm concerned, they are the bird people. Flap to the Future is part of their Bird Sleuth K-12 suite of bird-related educational resources. So this is just a part of a bigger program they offer. It's the mission of these lessons to aid teachers in their identification of birds, increase participation in science projects, and becoming more engaged with outdoor activities. Flap to the Future specifically explores the adaptation of flying through three related activities that build on each other, which is really awesome. It's aligned to the next generation standards as well as Common Core. After exploring these activities, I found several benefits to the program. They're thoughtful and thorough in their presentation of ideas with connections to other resources for supplemental materials. Now, I don't typically go for this sort of thing. I like when everything is right there in the lesson. I don't have to look any further, but it's kind of a necessary evil in this lesson. They have an online game that requires you going to another place. The game is really cool and really interesting, although I did very poorly in it. But for this, it makes sense. Sometimes I think it's just annoying, but this doesn't actually makes a lot of sense. They have a great discussion section with enough time for students to formulate their answers, and it's flexible. So if you wanted to turn it into a language arts project for individuals and they have to write their answers, you could, or you could turn it into a discussion or debate among groups. Any of that would be great. They have a glossary of terms, and I know this sounds silly, but hear me out. I like their glossary of terms because sometimes when I'm going through lessons, the definitions of terms is kind of spread throughout several pages, and so you're flipping through it trying to find all the terms. This has all of the vocabulary clearly defined all on one page at the end of the lesson, and I love that. That makes it so much easier to just go to one page, or you could pull that page out and have it with you when you're looking at other pages, whatever. I love it. Thank you, Cornell. Next, the activities are great for those who don't have a lot of access to outdoor environments, and we'll talk more about that, but I like that they're flexible and apply to a wider audience, especially because there's very minimal supplies needed. You really only need paper, pencil, and a computer, which most schools have that. And then the favorite thing for me about all of these activities is that they build on each other, making this an entire unit rather than a standalone lesson. Standalone lessons are great because they're easy to just throw into an already prepared lesson plan, but if you have some time you're trying to kill before break or whatever, or if you're trying to revamp your adaptations lesson, this can easily turn into a week or longer, and we'll talk more about that, but I really like that flexibility with these programs. When it comes to environmental education, flexibility is very important because it makes it easier for teachers to apply it into their classrooms, and that's really what we want them to do. Before we get talking about the flaws, I just want to say up front, I love Cornell, and I've used their website many times for bird identification, so I'm not trying to bash on them. I just feel like there's some inconsistency in this programming. If their intent is to have students connect with the outdoors, their programming should take them outdoors. All of the lessons in this portion of their programming has them indoors or on a computer. I feel as though their second activity, which focuses on this computer-based game, could be turned into a running around game. Now, I will say their game is really great. And again, I did very poorly. But I feel like, if it's sunny outside, go outside and do this activity. If it's raining, then try this alternative activity. But definitely, try this one. I feel like they could have provided an option. I also feel, since Cornell is kind of the authority on birds next to the Audubon Society, that they could have given schools and educators tips about how to do bird watching on a budget or how to do it in an urban area. They could have given advice about how to invite a bird organization to the school so they could connect children with birds. There's many reasons why you should do this, but here's a few. So connecting kids with real life experiences is really important. It shows, real life applicability. When we teach them more theoretical stuff rather than real life stuff, it's harder for kids to engage. It's harder for them to see why it's important. And it's just not as much fun, quite frankly. Also, when you connect them with these local organizations like zoos and aviaries, wildlife refuges, whatever, you're giving them an opportunity to connect with the community around them. You're giving your community an opportunity to connect with their citizens, which is great. And a lot of times these organizations will do it for free, which is a huge bonus. And they oftentimes will give you free stuff, which is also a bonus for your kids. But here's the big thing, I think, is that if we're expecting kids to take initiative to go outside on their own, it's probably not going to happen as much as I would love for it to happen. Kids need to have positive experiences in order to go outside. Okay, they have to have good feelings about being outside in order for them to go outside. If all they think about is the bugs and it's hot, or a dog bit them, or mosquitoes or whatever, they're not going to go outside. So we as educators have to give them positive experiences. Hey, let's do this short hike. I'm going to show you how fun it is. Hey, let's do this activity where we look at flowers outside. This is going to be fun. Let's do a log roll. The more positive experiences we give them, the more likely they're going to go outside. But when we speak theoretically and yet about the outside and yet we stay inside, it's much less likely that they're going to go outside. And I'm guilty of this as well. When I teach, it's much easier to just keep everybody inside and not go outside because it's hot or it's raining or it's wet or there's bugs or there's other people or whatever. I get it. I totally understand. But again, if that's one of your missions to get kids outside, then take them outside. Now, I will make one concession. If the funding for this project requires the use of technology, I can see why they have to use the game. But since Cornell is amazing and they have crazy resources and they're smart and educated and just, amazing. I can't suck up to them enough. They're amazing, okay? Then I feel as though they could have developed an app for students to go outside. A lot of schools have tablets nowadays, so they could, develop an app that's just for schools, that's free, or, requires a small subscription fee to keep it running. They have apps like iNaturalist. Maybe you could talk to them, you could develop something like that. Or, there's a pop culture one called Pokemon Go that came out in 2016. And I worked in parks at the time, and it was kind of weird to see grown people staring at their phone, wandering around a park and then bolting for their car. But it got people outside. It got them moving, got them walking, got them into their parks in the area, and that was great. So let's try to do something like that. You know what I mean? I feel like Cornell and all of its wisdom and resources maybe could have done that. Now, I don't like to complain about something or say I have a problem with something and not provide an option. So I've taken it upon myself to develop an adapted flat for the future that involves an obstacle course. And each level of the obstacle course corresponds to the online game. So in stage 1, you have the Tawas in the game, and their greatest asset is their legs. And at this point, you can develop a scavenger hunt where your students collect items, or maybe an obstacle course, relay race, whatever you want to do, where they can only travel place to place by, running or jumping rope or something that really taxes their legs. So that would be stage 1. So then for stage 2 in the game, it's the Microraptor, and their greatest asset is their gliding ability. So in order for students to traverse an obstacle course or a relay race or whatever, they would have to use a paper airplane. And for this, I would recommend using the Project Wild lesson, which is called Newton, Bernoulli, and Birds. And in this lesson, your students learn about lift and Newton's laws, and they actually make an airfoil that kind of looks like a paper airplane, but it's very complex and it's kind of hard, but if you follow the directions, you can do it. And it looks like a bird, so it perfectly fits into this lesson. But basically, you wouldn't have to go that far. You could make your own paper airplane if you wanted to. You can get some great books from a library about paper airplanes, whatever. So that's how I would tie into it. And yeah, for the next stage, which is stage 3, it would be the American robin in the game. They are balanced in their abilities, so they can travel however they want, I feel like, but they do need to have some kind of restriction because they are not at the top of the ability. So I would have them wait after they collect an item or an obstacle, or make them do like 15 jumping jacks or something after each obstacle before they can move on. That's a really easy way to kind of slow them down a little bit too. So then to stage 4, we have Future Bird. And for this, you could really have them do whatever they want. They're at the top of their game with being advanced in every way. As you can see, they have full abilities. And we're going to talk more about this in a minute, about what I really think you should do about it. But this could really be kind of a wild card in any way that you want to do it. So on to my week-long session suggestion. I would say Monday or day 1, you could do activity 1, which discusses dinosaurs and their connection to the birds. This is straight from Flap to the Future. Then run the obstacle course using only the Tawa abilities. I would say make an obstacle course different every time, in addition to changing their abilities and what they're able to do. That way you can remove the variable of them knowing the obstacle course and it being easier for them. Okay. So then Tuesday or day 2, you would have them, I would have them do the activity from Flying Wild, Newton, Bernoulli, and Birds, and then use that airfoil they make to run the obstacle course. But you could do a tutorial on plane making, or you could have them do the actual activity number 2 from Flap to the Future and then do the obstacle course as well. Wednesday, I would have them run the obstacle course and do activity 2. Then on activity or day 4, I would have them do activity 3 after I've brought in some sort of guest or some sort of experience where they can connect themselves to birds. Maybe it's they sit outside and do bird watching or something. I don't know. Some sort of special experience, and then do activity 3. And then Friday, based on whatever bird they make in activity 3, they would use those abilities from their future bird they've created to complete the obstacle course on the last day. Now, of course, you need discussion questions, and I will say that the discussion questions within the Flap to the Future activities are great. I'm just kind of adding a few that I would talk about, which would be estimating and predicting creatures, ability to compete, and who's the fastest. Estimations and predictions are really great, getting that scientific process going, testing your hypothesis. Discuss any challenges you might face, how you would overcome them, discuss your results, compare, contrast, and so on. All of these things are viable options. And you, as a teacher, I mean, at least in my experience, what I do is I just sort of follow the discussion. I don't have a set list of questions per se. I have kind of a guide, but some kid may inspire more questions that I ask. So these are more of a guideline than an actual rule. Okay. And then finally, and to conclude, overall the programming is great. I love it. I love Cornell. I can't suck up to them enough. They're great, but I do feel as though they missed the objective of connecting students with outdoors. I think you actually need to take them outdoors if you're saying you want to connect them with it. I think that the modifications I suggest could help with that, between doing an obstacle course outside and bringing in outside agencies or bird watching experiences, any of those things. I think connecting them with local agencies is great to get them interested in citizen science, get them into volunteering and so forth, connect their families, etc. Any sort of real life experiences are always better than something that's theoretical. I developed a rubric for grading these various environmental education curricula as I go through them. It's a 5-point scale with 4 criteria: content, structure, meets objectives, and creativity. As far as content goes, I think they did a great job. It's easy to understand, it's relevant, the content is thorough and thoughtful. Structure of the content is great. It's not choppy, it flows really well, it builds on itself. Some curricula I've looked at is kind of cut up really weird, and it's kind of distracting from such great content. So they get 5 out of 5 on content and structure. Now, I feel like I probably should be a little bit harsher on Cornell as far as meeting their objectives and creativity, because I know what they're capable of, at least on a small scale. I don't know what they do on a larger scale. But so I did take a point away for meeting their objectives. If you're going to say you want to get kids outside, then you need to take them outside. It's that simple. I probably should give them a lesser score, but I do think as far as being applicable to a large range of schools, regardless of, if they're a title school that gets state funding or not, I think they have a really great general approach. But again, if you're going to say, I'm going to connect them with outside, then you have to take them outside. I'm sorry. Sorry, Cornell. I love you. And then as far as creativity goes, again, coming back to the technology portion of it, I think with all of their resources and how brilliant people are across the nation, and I'm sure Cornell has some sort of technology chapter within their university, I feel like they could have been a little more creative with the technology application and coming up with activities that take the kids outside. Maybe it's not an obstacle course, but maybe it's some kind of like Bird Go app. I don't know. There's got to be some way to connect technology and outside to meet those objectives and be creative and meet the standards. I'm sure there is. That's the whole point of environmental education. We say that we're going to connect kids in a fun and engaging way. We're going to get them outside. We're going to do hands-on activities. Handing them paper, handing them a computer is not thinking outside the box. It's not pushing the boundaries. We can do more than that. A lot of programs do. Some of them don't, but a lot of them do. And I think it's truly a missed opportunity here on Cornell's part. But the content is great. The structure is great. And you can definitely use this more of a guide rather than a rule. So if you have some creative ideas to get your kids outside using these ideas, then do so. There's nobody that says you can't. Okay. Check it out. Again, Flap to the Future by Cornell University. If you just Google it, it'll take you right to it. Have a great day, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.